welcome to the Busy Signal. My name is Jim, and this is my retro-nostalgic 80s, 90s, and early 2000s podcast. This show aims to salute all the stuff from back in the day that is now extinct or quickly going that way. Hey everybody, Season 2 of the Busy Signal podcast. Thanks for tuning in. It's spooky season here, and this is our first Halloween special episode. So, in true Busy Signal fashion, let's talk toys from back in the day. But not just any toys, spooky toys. Toys that were meant to be a little scary, a little ghoulish, even hairy, and definitely gross. Toys that were creepy and fun. And isn't that the combo that all kids want in their toys? Creepy and fun? I know it is for me. So that's what we're doing this episode. We're going to dig up some old spooky toys. But just before we do that, here's a quick message from our nostalgic neighbors, the No More Late Fees podcast.
Join Jackie and Danielle, two best friends and ex-Blockbuster employees who are rewatching some of their favorite movies from the late 90s and early 2000s on the No More Late Fees podcast. And remember, be kind and rewind.
All right, so let's jump right on in and go with my first set of spooky toys. I've mentioned Ghostbusters before on this podcast, but really only by way of one of the worst licensed Nintendo games ever produced. And that's not fair, really, to the Ghostbusters. So let's even the scales a little bit, and we'll kick it back to 1987. That's when Kenner introduced the first line of the real Ghostbusters toys. Peter, Ray, Egon, and Winston. Figures with proton packs and little vinyl ghosts. Also in this first run of toys that Kenner put out was the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man and Slimer. I had them all, and I played with them for hours. Every day. For years. Then the second line of Ghostbusters came out. New figures, new outfits, new ghosts. Yup. I got them all. But not only did we get new Ghostbusters and new ghosts in this second wave of toys that Kenner put out, we also got slime. We got buckets of slime. More specifically, purple ectoplasm. And that was nothing short of awesome.
There's something strange in the neighborhood.
So who you gonna call? Ghostbusters! Each sold separately.
Have no fear. Venkman, Steph, and Spengler are here. So are these ghosts. They've got ectoplasm. We've been goofed. Now what? Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Let's show this pile of dessert who's boss. Activate Neutrona Blaster. We ain't afraid of them. Ghosts.
Peter Venkman, Ectoplasm, Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, and other figures each sold separately. Ghostbusters, new from Kenner.
Kenner every year just kept putting out waves and waves of new Ghostbusters toys. By the time they put out their third wave of toys, I had gotten Ecto 1, and I had also gotten a full-size ghost trap, a proton pack, a PKE meter, and the Ghostbusters headquarters, complete with a working fire pole and holes on the roof so that you could put your buckets of slime and it would rain down on the Ghostbusters inside the headquarters. Every play session was like a little movie, and Kenner put out 10 lines of Ghostbusters toys between 1987 and 1991. That is a lot of Ghostbusting in a very short amount of time. And no, I didn't get all of the toys that were released in all 10 lines of Kenner Ghostbusters toys. That would be, one, a lot of money for my mom to have spent, but two, that would be crazy. Do I have some of my Ghostbusters? Yes. Not very many, though. I have one Ghostbuster technically. I have Ray from the first line of Ghostbusters. I don't have any of the things that came with him, like the proton pack or anything like that. It's just Ray. And I have my PKE meter, and the sticker on the display had fallen off of it a long time ago. I will post pictures on Instagram of my remaining Ghostbusters paraphernalia. And I'll do that on Instagram at Busy Signal Cast. Needless to say, Ghostbusters were a huge part of my childhood. To be watching the real Ghostbusters cartoon while drinking Ecto Cooler, playing with Ghostbusters figures, it doesn't get better than that. It just doesn't. But Ghostbusters weren't the only ghoulish toys in town that debuted in 1987. Mattel released a series of toy hand puppets called Boglins. Essentially, they were goblin puppets. And you know what? They were actually genuinely creepy. This was a toy that only the 1980s could bring the world. It had a very 80s horror movie vibe. Like, it looks like it legitimately could have been used as a movie prop in a horror film. They were made of flexible rubber, easy for manipulation. Their arms and hands wobbled about, and the inside, your hand could control the mouth and the eyes. That could move the eyes back and forth and the mouth open and close. They were marketed as toys kind of like to scare your siblings or surprise your parents with, or it would protect you from things coming at you, the boglins would, That's kind of like how they were marketed.
Psst, over here, I'm a boglin. Me and my buddies need a place to hide out. Come a little closer. Oh, did I scare you? Oh, I do that so well. If you take us home, we'll kiss your Aunt Martha. We'll eat your peas. And we hope you know lots of girls. Hey, the name's Boglins, each sold separately, and we're looking for good homes. Maybe yours.
And I had one of these things, and if I'm going to be completely honest, while I think I liked it as a child, when I look back, the memories that I actually really have of it are the flexible rubber smelled weird, and dust would stick to it permanently. Once the dust got on it, you could not wipe it off. And it seemed like if you tried to take water to it, it would mess with that weird pliable rubber, and it just was gross. But the dust thing, I'm not really sure if that was a feature or a flaw, because if you left your boglin in the corner of a room or under your bed for any extended amount of time, it basically grew a layer of hair. It was dust, which is gross, but aren't goblins kind of gross and maybe a little bit hairy? I mean, they didn't actually make a hairy boglin, so now you had a hairy boglin. And that added a very gross out feature to the toy that maybe I didn't appreciate enough back in the day. Boglins, they pushed them hard. They even had their own 900 number. That's right, a 1-900 number. And you would call it and they would tell you stories. This was a very popular thing in the 80s, by the way, these 800 and 900 numbers for cartoons or characters to tell you stories or jokes. It was definitely a thing. Trust me, for $2 for the first 2 minutes and 35 cents for each additional minute, you could talk to Dwork, Vlob, or Drool on your telephone, with your parents' permission, of course.
Hi, I'm a boglin. Me and my buddies want to be your friend, right, guys? Right. Call us at 1-900-909-5464 and hear how we can protect you from ferocious beasts.
And help your teacher grade your math test.
Yeah, new story every day.
1 call gets you a 3D boglin hologram like this.
4 calls get you a set of 6. Trade them with your buddies.
And part of your $2.35 2-minute call goes to Special Olympics.
So get your parents' permission and call us at 1-900-909-5464. Don't get the phone. I said get it, not eat it.
The 1980s were weird. Oh, and by the way, boglins are back. Just Google it. They're trying to make it a thing again. I don't know how successful that's going to be. When you think of the toy company Matchbox, what do you think? Yeah, same here, right? I think of cars. But in 1990, Matchbox released a line of toys that were not even close to automobiles. Monsters in My Pocket. If you go all the way back to episode 5 of this podcast, you will go back and find that I describe muscle men. Tiny, hard rubber figures that were wrestlers. Well, that's Monsters in My Pocket. Tiny, hard rubber figures, but monsters instead of wrestlers. And they came in a variety of colors. They could be red, yellow, green, purple. Later releases included new monsters and a bunch of new colors, including neon varieties. Just like Muscle Men, they were great. A kid could grab 4 to 6 of them easily and keep them in their pocket for playtime anywhere.
What do you have in your pocket?
Monster in my pocket.
They're here. They're everywhere. They're squishy. Monster in My Pocket. New from Matchbox.
And the monsters that they made were pretty rad too. I'm not going to name all 48 of them that were released in the first run, but here are a few of my favorites. Werewolf, Bigfoot, Hobgoblin, Mad Scientist, Spring-Heeled Jack, and Skeleton. The detail on these tiny terrors was amazing. They were super collectible, and they were assigned point values that ranged from 5 to 25. I never understood the point values, I just wanted the monsters. Later, Matchbox produced monsters of higher point value, and once again, that meant nothing to me. What is easily known was that this was a very popular franchise. It had its own Nintendo games and a Saturday morning cartoon to boot. However, not everybody was a fan of My Pet Monster. There were a few of the characters that had to be pulled because they were literally deities from other cultures. Those figures were pulled pretty quickly from the market, and My Pet Monster enjoyed a solid 6-year run. They did attempt a relaunch in 2006, and I'm thinking that wasn't successful because I have not seen Monsters in My Pocket in a long time. Do you remember these mini monsters? If busting ghosts, goblin puppets, and itty-bitty beasts weren't your thing as a kid, then Tycho had your back. If you had a hunger for ghastly grub, 1994 was your banner year. The Dr. Dreadful Food Labs provided kids with the ability to create their own gruesome goodies. Yum. This was a gross-out toy, plain and simple, but an edible gross-out toy. There were several different labs to choose from. Food Lab, Drink Lab, Ice Scream Machine, Brain Juice Lab, Squeam Lab, and more. Basically, you could make your own fruit snacks shaped like spiders, roaches, brains, guts, you name it. Everything else you could make just kind of seemed like it was a neon, goopy, sugary slurry. This type of toy was not my bag. It was not something that appealed to me ever as a kid. I don't like spiders in real life. I don't like roaches in real life. My brains belong in my skull. Brains and guts never really tempt me. I'm not like, ooh, I'm hungry when I see that stuff. That's kind of gross. So the Dr. Dreadful commercials, yeah, they grossed me out of actually even wanting the toy at all.
Hi, I'm Dr. Dreadful, and this is the Dr. Dreadful Food Lab. Makes lots of gross things, and then you eat them. Dr. Dreadful's monster skin. Care for a tasty tarantula, fly, cockroach? You can make swarms! And now magic powder, stir, and... monster brains! Fruity! The Dr. Dreadful Food Lab makes gross things again and again. It's totally dreadful!
I always wondered, who are these kids that make and eat the monster skin? It always seemed to me like these were the types of kids that would end up on America's Most Wanted, you know? I will say that at one point I did see a Dr. Dreadful Food Lab that was an alien autopsy. And that was kind of cool because it had the alien on the table and you'd spread the ribs and all the guts would be dancing around there. That was kind of cool, but once again, I wouldn't eat it. That's gross. But if baked goods were more your speed, Hasbro stepped into the gross out food ring with their fantastically named Queasy Bake Oven. In 2002, this ghoulish version of the much-loved Easy Bake Oven was released, and kids could cook up copious amounts of creepy confections in this cookerator until their heart's content. All you needed was a 100-watt light bulb to make decrepit delicacies such as chocolate crud cake, delicious dirt, crunchy dog bones, lava-licious cookies, and oldie-moldy cake, and so much more vomitous food.
Chef Queasy coming through. That's nasty. This is tasty. Mud and crud cakes. Baked them up fresh in my Queasy Bake Cookerator. Now you're the chef. Mix her up. Pop it in the cookerator. Ta-da! You can add mud, gravel, some worms. Good job. Did I mention? Turns your mouth green. Queasy Bake looks gross, tastes great. Cookerator comes with 2 mixes, other mixes sold separately, light bulb not included, assembly required.
Sadly though, Hasbro discontinued it pretty much almost right after it released it. It was not out for very long. So if you have a Queasy Bake Oven still, I would consult eBay ASAP because you're sitting on something. I guess what I'm saying with Dr. Dreadful and the Queasy Bake Oven is that if you were a bit twisted and conventional treats just didn't do it for you, you had options. They were gross, but options nonetheless. I said that the 1980s in general was creepy, and I stand by that. But the 1990s also had its own brand of creepiness, fueled by R.L. Stine. He gave us his legendary Goosebumps franchise. By the mid-90s, Goosebumps had a firm grip in popular culture, already being a wildly successful book series. It then went on to get its own show on Fox, and in 1996, one of the greatest gross-out toys ever was produced by Kenner, the Goosebumps Monster Headmaker. It's a skull with dozens of frightening facial parts, kind of like a paranormal potato head. Oh, and don't forget the slime, of course, there's oozy slime. You could mix and match the parts to make your own monster or mutant, or you could recreate 4 characters from the classic Goosebumps series: The Haunted Mask, Curse of Mummy's Tomb, Stay Out of the Basement, and The Girl Who Cried Monster. All classic monsters from R.L. Stine.
Now the horror is in your hands with Goosebumps Monster Head Maker. Create 4 hideous heads from the chilling tales of R.L. Stine, or eye-popping creations from your imagination that drip and drool.
I've got a runny nose.
Talk about gross. Crack open a dread head.
Monster blood.
Or try edible brain bites.
Look, Dad.
Handsome. Goosebumps brain bites you can eat. Monster Head Maker and Dreadhead you can't. Each sold separately.
This was a must-have in 1996, and it could also double as a really rad Halloween decoration. I wish I had one. I didn't have one, but the commercials always seemed really cool. I'm pretty happy with this collection of spooky toys so far. Not gonna lie. But in reality, it isn't complete. Yet. It's missing something. Something big, something iconic, something that inspired a horror franchise that is still operating today. My Buddy. In 1985, Hasbro decided that boys needed a doll, but not just any doll, a life-size doll, one with a kind face, overalls, and a baseball cap. Basically an inanimate playmate, or a pretend sibling, if you will. At least that's what the commercials were suggesting, a life-size silent play pal to bring along on your play sessions. I mean, the description I've given for My Buddy seems pretty innocuous. And the toy was innocent. But if you know, you know. It's a known fact that by nature dolls are kind of creepy. And to bring a toddler-sized doll into your home, that's just bad juju. As an adult, the thought of bringing a My Buddy doll into my home just sitting somewhere in the house gives me the ick. And I'm not the only one to think this. In 1988, just 3 years after My Buddy was released, the movie Child's Play opened in theaters and the world was introduced to Chucky. The resemblance to the My Buddy doll was undeniable. The director of Child's Play, Tom Holland, gave an interview to Comcast in 2013, and basically, Chucky is a My Buddy with Raggedy Ann qualities and the creepiness of an infant doll. That is the best way I've ever heard it described, because it's true. He even wanted to use the name Buddy instead of Chucky, but obviously couldn't for obvious reasons. And oh, by the way, I haven't even actually mentioned the most terrifying thing about My Buddy yet. And it's probably already got a hold of you. And once it gets you, it owns you. And if by chance you've no idea what I'm talking about, save yourself. You'll want to skip ahead about
My buddy, my buddy, my buddy, my buddy. Wherever I go, he goes. My buddy, my buddy, my buddy, my buddy. I'll teach him everything that I know. My buddy and me, like the climb up a tree. My buddy and me, we're the best friends it could be. My buddy, my buddy, my buddy, my buddy, my buddy and me.
My Buddy from Play School.
Too late. Your brain has been infected. The My Buddy theme song is the most evil of catchy jingles ever. And speaking of evil sounds, there was one Halloween decoration that had a grip on spooky season in the late 80s and early 90s, and it was a must-have by everyone. It was hung on porches and doorways and hung around unsuspecting corners, even in school classrooms. It became the unofficial soundtrack of Halloween for a while. It always took a different form though. A ghost, a witch, some kind of version of a monster, a bat, and so on. A real shapeshifter. It shook on a string and it had red glowing eyes maybe, but it always made the same sound. What was this thing even called? It was just a Halloween decoration ghost. You could buy them at Target or Walgreens or CVS. They were sold everywhere. And it doesn't matter really what it was called. The only thing that mattered is that it was there, even when you didn't know it was there. And when you walked through that doorway, it got you. So here's to spooky season. May your McDonald's Boo Buckets be heavy with full-size chocolate bars and not rocks. Don't forget to have your parents check your candy and apples for razor blades and discard all open candy items. I hope you had fun with this Halloween episode. It was a blast going back and checking out all the old school spooky toys. But before I leave you, I have a review to read. And it comes from our nostalgic neighbors over at the No More Late Fees podcast. Please go check them out. You won't regret it. Danny K. Duke writes, having a blast listening to this podcast. The sound effects, topics, and all-round vibe is my cup of tea. I love the host. His voice reminds me of an old school radio jock. I just love jumping into a time warp with this pod and can't wait to listen to more. Danielle. That is a certified super rad review. Thank you so much, Danielle. I totally appreciate it. And once again, if you would like to hear your review read, head on over to Apple or Spotify and give a positive review, and you can do that there. Thanks a lot, everybody. Happy Halloween. Once again, I'd like to say thanks for listening. And as always, you can listen to The Busy Signal everywhere quality podcasts are streamed. Hit the subscribe button to have a new episode delivered directly to your favorite device every other Friday. If you really like the show, leave a 5-star rating or a positive review on Apple and Spotify. That lets everybody else know to come check out what you already think is awesome. You can also head over to Instagram and follow the show at Busy Signalcast for even more retro-nostalgic content. I share a good amount of fun stuff that isn't mentioned on the episodes. While you're there, say hi in the comments. Don't be shy. And until next time, remember, reach out and touch the past.